The slap echoed across the cabin like a gunshot. 16-year-old Marcus Jackson sat stunned in his first-class seat, a red handprint blazing across his cheek, a trickle of blood sliding from his lip. The murmurs were instant, soft gasps, stifled laughs, judgmental whispers. He probably deserved it. But none of them knew who he was. Flight attendant Veronica Palmer stood over him, her smirk betraying a deeper contempt as she hissed, "Don't make a scene." But the scene had already begun. Marcus reached for his phone with trembling fingers, not to call the airline, not to call security, but to call his father. Not just any father. Tyler Jackson, CEO of Skyline International Airlines, Dominion's fiercest competitor. Seconds later, the flight veered off course. And minutes after that, the flight crew's world would begin to collapse. What happened at 30,000 feet would become a national scandal, an industry reckoning, and the spark for one of the most powerful justice movements the airline world had ever seen. Before we continue this shocking story of injustice at 30,000 feet, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And if you believe everyone deserves fair treatment regardless of their skin color, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more true stories of courage in the face of discrimination. The scent of leather and citrus hung in the air of Dominion Airlines Flight 2187's first-class cabin, a space meticulously curated to project prestige and exclusivity. Marcus Jackson, dressed modestly in a navy button-down and khakis, took his assigned window seat with quiet composure. He didn't flaunt his identity. He didn't need to. This trip wasn't about entitlement. It was a mission. His father, Tyler Jackson, CEO of Skyline International and a former Air Force pilot, had given his son a task: observe how Dominion treated their passengers. It was a market experiment, one driven by insight rather than status. Marcus was headed to the National STEM Innovation Challenge in San Francisco, where his research into algorithmic bias in facial recognition had earned him a finalist spot. He was by all measures not only brilliant, but principled. As the plane taxied, Marcus noticed something peculiar. Veronica Palmer, the platinum blonde flight attendant with a rigid smile and even stiffer posture, skipped over his row during the drink service. Not once, not twice, 3 times. Each time she passed, her attention zeroed in on the white passengers around him. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely, the 3rd time lifting his hand. "Could I have some water?" Veronica's glance was fleeting. "I'll get to you when I can," she replied coolly, already turning her full attention to a businessman across the aisle. "Sir, another scotch?" Marcus said nothing. He had learned early that silence can be louder than protest when wielded with intention. Still, he noted the behavior. He pulled out a well-worn notebook and began jotting down what he saw. 15 minutes passed. No water. He tried again. "Excuse me, I still haven't been served." This time Veronica approached, but her posture told a different story. Her voice dropped, laced with condescension. "First class or not, some people need to learn their place." Marcus flinched inwardly, but said nothing. He took a mental snapshot of her tone, her posture, and her words. Around him, white passengers looked on with detached amusement, or worse, complicit silence. Nearby, an elderly black man in economy waved for assistance. Ignored. Across from him, a young black woman pressed the call button. No response. It wasn't isolated, it was a pattern, and Marcus was documenting it. Later, when the warm towel service began, Veronica practically tossed his toward him without eye contact. When she collected trash, she skipped him entirely, forcing him to hold his cup for nearly an hour. Each indignity was small, deniable, until they piled into something undeniable. 2 hours into the flight, turbulence struck. A jolt rocked the cabin and Marcus held tight to his seat. Veronica, carrying a tray of coffee, stumbled, then tilted the tray toward him. Scalding coffee poured onto his lap. He jumped up in pain. "Oh my," she said with mock concern. "How clumsy of you to bump into me during turbulence." "I didn't move," Marcus replied, stunned. "You poured that on me, deliberately." Passengers nearby exchanged looks. Some smirked. One man, Gerald Thompson, the suited businessman across the aisle, chimed in. "Kid, it was clearly an accident. Don't make a scene. It was gaslighting at 30,000 feet. Marcus stared at them, the disbelief cutting deeper than the burn on his thighs. In that moment, the microaggressions sharpened into something crueler. They didn't see a STEM scholar. They didn't see the son of a CEO. They didn't even see a teenager. They saw a problem in a seat they didn't believe he belonged in. I need to speak to the lead flight attendant, Marcus said firmly. You can speak to me, Veronica hissed, mask slipping. And I don't appreciate your tone. This wasn't an accident, Marcus said calmly, pulling out his phone. And I have video of how you've been treating me and others since takeoff. Veronica's eyes widened. You can't record crew members. That's against airline policy. It's not, Marcus countered. Federal regulations allow passengers to record their own experiences. The tension spiked. Gerald Thompson stood again. He was disruptive earlier, threatened her, said she'd lose her job if she didn't treat him special. Marcus turned to him in disbelief. That's a lie. But the tide was already turning. Passengers looked away. Security Curtis Benson approached without asking questions. Sit down and stay there. We'll restrain you if you move again. She hit me. Marcus pointed at his bleeding lip. I didn't do anything. Then Veronica lunged, grabbing for his phone. Airline policy allows confiscation of devices used improperly. Don't touch my property. Marcus pulled back. And then it happened. Veronica's open palm met his face, hard. A red streak bloomed across his cheek as her ring sliced his lip. The sound of the slap echoed. Gasps. Silence. Veronica stepped back, voice high with fake alarm. He tried to assault me. I was defending myself. Curtis didn't hesitate. One more move and we'll restrain you until landing. No one moved until a calm, determined voice broke through from a few rows back. That's not what happened. All eyes turned. Dr. Michelle Lin, an Asian American physician, stood tall. I saw everything. She attacked him. The cover-up was beginning to unravel. But Marcus wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. At precisely 10:19 a.m., Tyler Jackson's secure phone lit up with a direct call from Marcus. The line was used only for urgent family or national-level emergencies. This was both. As soon as Tyler heard the whisper of his son's trembling voice, the cold fury took over. Dad, I need help. Those 4 words shifted the trajectory of not just a flight, but an entire industry. Tyler didn't waste a second. Within 60 seconds, he'd closed his financial reports, redirected his calendar, and opened the secure comm suite inside his Atlanta estate. He wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a father and a commander preparing for battle. The first call went to the FAA. Tyler had cultivated relationships there since his days as a young pilot. The second to his industry contacts in air traffic control. The third was direct. He bypassed Dominion Airlines CEO Charles Wellington and went straight to the board chairman Lawrence Fisher. Your flight attendant just assaulted my son. FAA has been alerted. You have 60 seconds to act before I escalate to national media and international regulators. Onboard Flight 2187. Confusion rippled through the cockpit as Captain Joseph Reynolds received an encrypted directive: divert immediately to Knoxville. Site mechanical concern. FAA approved. Immediate compliance required. He turned to his first officer. This came from the top. Meanwhile, in the first-class cabin, Veronica Palmer received a message on her crew phone. Her face turned pale. She turned to junior flight attendant Emma Rodriguez. Do you know who the kid in 3A is? Emma blinked. Marcus Jackson. Wait, Jackson. As in Tyler Jackson, the CEO of Skyline International. Veronica's hands shook. That's impossible. Curtis Benson, the security officer, leaned in. It's probably espionage. But it doesn't matter. He was disruptive. Veronica's mask began to crack. Captain Reynolds exited the cockpit and pulled Veronica aside. Headquarters just informed me who you slapped. Tyler Jackson's son. Veronica tried to maintain control. He lunged at me. Thompson in 3B will confirm. Reynolds didn't flinch. I don't care if the Pope confirms it. FAA is already involved. We land in Knoxville and everyone's getting off this plane. Back in the first-class cabin, Captain Reynolds approached Marcus with a completely different tone. Mr. Jackson, on behalf of Dominion Airlines, I sincerely apologize for everything that's happened. Can I move you to the private crew rest area? Marcus wiped blood from his lip. No, thank you, Captain. I don't want special treatment. I want basic respect. Veronica, in full panic, moved through the cabin, whispering to passengers. There's been a misunderstanding. If anyone asks, he was aggressive, right? He lunged at me. Most passengers avoided her gaze, except Gerald Thompson, who nodded. I'll back you up. From her row, Doctor. Michelle Lynn quietly hit record on her phone as she watched Veronica tampering with witnesses. The plane descended into Knoxville. On the tarmac, multiple police cruisers, two unmarked federal vehicles, and agents waiting with grim faces. The aircraft didn't taxi to the gate. It stopped in a remote zone. Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom. "Remain seated. Authorities are boarding." Curtis Benson approached Marcus again, his tone now forced and deferential. "Sir, I apologize. It's all a misunderstanding." Marcus met his eyes. "You can start by treating everyone equally, regardless of who you think they are." The door opened. A woman in a dark blue blazer stepped aboard. "I'm Inspector Gloria Washington, FAA. All active crew are hereby relieved of duty. You will exit the aircraft for federal questioning." The cabin fell silent. Marcus looked out the window. This was no longer a confrontation. It was a reckoning. Inspector Washington coordinated the removal of crew. In a private terminal, crew members were questioned individually. Veronica Palmer tried to spin her narrative, claiming the incident was an ambush. Tyler Jackson sent his son as bait. This was corporate sabotage. And the blood on his face, the agent asked. He did it to himself. I defended myself. Meanwhile, Dr. Lynn submitted her recording. Gerald Thompson, when confronted with it, began to crack. "I may have misinterpreted things." Within hours, a media storm erupted. Black CEO's son slapped on flight, entire crew detained. Trending globally. Dominion's stock dropped 8%. Marcus was treated by airport medics. Photos of his injuries leaked online. By the time Tyler Jackson's jet touched down, cameras swarmed. He didn't run. He didn't yell. He walked with controlled fury, flanked by lawyers and calm authority. "My son was assaulted. The truth will speak for itself." Inside, Marcus greeted his father. "I'm okay, Dad, but this isn't just about me. It's systemic." Tyler nodded. "We don't let this go." They didn't yet know that Wellington had already arrived at the opposite side of the airport, and he wasn't planning to surrender. He was preparing for war. While the public reeled from the viral footage of Marcus's bleeding lip and the slap heard around the world, Tyler Jackson and his team wasted no time digging beneath the surface. Within hours of reuniting with his son, Tyler set up a crisis war room at a private suite near Knoxville Airport. The question was no longer what happened, it was, how deep did this rot go? Tyler's lead attorney, Simone Washington, brought in a forensics team and initiated a full audit of the incident. She also requested Marcus' phone be examined, not just for the slap, but for any evidence leading up to it. Within minutes, they retrieved damning footage showing Marcus being repeatedly ignored, verbally insulted, and deliberately spilled on. The videos were time-stamped, clearly showing a pattern of behavior. But Simone wasn't done. "We're going after this from every angle," she said, spreading documents across the table. "We need more than the incident. We need the culture that allowed it." That night, Tyler's cybersecurity team, including a former NSA analyst, broke into publicly available employment records and internal memos from Dominion's corporate site. What they discovered was deeply unsettling. Sir, the analyst said, sliding a tablet to Tyler Palmer's, got a history. 7 discrimination complaints. All buried, every one of them involved passengers of color. All dismissed with the same boilerplate phrases: insufficient evidence, passenger misunderstanding. The complaints dated back 3 years. One involved an elderly black woman who was denied food service and told her seat had been double booked. Another described a black veteran being accused of using a stolen military ID to board first class. "This is pattern, not accident," Simone said, eyes cold. "And someone at the top is enabling it." A second discovery deepened the crisis. A Dominion training slide deck originally leaked by a whistleblower on Reddit months prior, but quickly scrubbed from the web, had been archived. Tyler's team recovered it. The document was titled Passenger Profiling for Premium Service Optimization. It read like a corporate guide to modern segregation. Though no race was mentioned explicitly, examples used photos and language that made the intent unmistakable. One section stated, "Prioritize attention to customers who appear professionally affluent or influential in their field. Signals include European suits, fine watches, or Ivy League accessories." Another section explained how to optimize service bandwidth by deprioritizing passengers more likely to consume resources without premium returns. In plain terms, give less service to black and brown passengers, especially those traveling alone or not showing overt wealth signals. Marcus, still recovering, leaned over the document. "This is algorithmic bias, Dad, institutionalized in human form. Tyler nodded gravely. We're not dealing with a rogue employee. We're dealing with a corporate doctrine. But just as they prepared to hand this over to federal investigators, a sudden shift caught them off guard. Tyler's head of security entered the war room with troubling news. Sir, FAA jurisdiction has been challenged. Local PD Chief Robert Whitfield is asserting control over the investigation. Simone frowned. On what basis? He claims the incident was simple assault and occurred in local airspace. He's declaring it outside federal scope. Tyler's instincts fired immediately. Pull his background. It took all of 15 minutes to confirm the truth. Robert Whitfield had been Charles Wellington's college roommate. The two remained close. Whitfield had even received donations from the Wellington Family Foundation to fund new police equipment. Of course, Tyler muttered. They're laundering influence through philanthropy. The consequences were immediate. Evidence seized from the aircraft, including Marcus's original footage, was accidentally corrupted during transfer. Dr. Michelle Lynn's video was now fragmented into meaningless digital noise. Official statements from the crew were revised and homogenized to say Marcus had been aggressive and threatening. Most disturbing, Marcus himself was questioned for hours without a guardian present, a direct violation of federal protections for minors. They're flipping the investigation, Simone snapped. They're putting him on trial. Indeed, during questioning, Marcus was asked why he flew Dominion instead of Skyline. They accused him of being a corporate spy. They hinted his behavior had provoked a slap. Marcus emerged shaken. They're not investigating what happened to me, he told his father. They're investigating me. Across the cities, Charles Wellington pulled the strings from his wood-paneled office, sipping bourbon, as news rolled in. Jackson thinks his contacts can hurt me. Let's see how they like the real game. He had no intention of letting this become a referendum on racism and air travel. To Wellington, this was war, and wars were won not with truth, but with control. The tide was turning, and the Jacksons knew it, but they also knew something Wellington didn't. They weren't alone anymore. Injustice had awakened a storm, and that storm was gathering. While Tyler Jackson strategized in boardrooms and Marcus recovered from trauma, outside forces were stirring. The calculated attempt to flip the narrative had left a bitter taste in the mouths of those who had seen the truth with their own eyes. What Wellington's coalition hadn't counted on was the growing number of witnesses, people once too afraid to speak, who were now ready to rise. The first to break ranks was Emma Rodriguez. She was the junior flight attendant assigned to the same cabin that day. Unlike Veronica Palmer, Emma had kept her head down during the flight, quietly watching, silently recording incidents on her personal device under the guise of checking inventory. She had seen it all: Marcus being ignored, the towel tossed like trash, the scalding spill, and the slap. For 3 days, she stayed silent. Dominion's HR had instructed her to submit a pre-written statement. They claimed they were investigating, but had already promised promotions to those who towed the line. Emma had bills to pay, family to support, and a career she had fought hard for. But something about Marcus's composure, his refusal to crumble, kept haunting her. Late one night, Emma placed a call. Mr. Jackson, it's Emma. I can't let this sit anymore. I have evidence. She met Tyler and Marcus in a secure hotel conference room, her face pale but determined. She brought a flash drive. On it, video clips showing the crew whispering conspiratorially after the incident, passengers expressing confusion and discomfort, and Veronica smirking as she wiped Marcus' blood from her hand. This wasn't a bad day, Emma said. It's how she always talks about passengers she thinks don't belong. Emma had more. She'd been documenting discriminatory practices at Dominion for months. Internal messages, training materials, and even audio recordings from meetings where crew were told to preserve premium experience optics, a coded instruction to favor affluent white passengers. She wasn't rogue, Emma explained. She was following culture. Simone Washington verified the files and immediately sent copies to the Department of Transportation and the FAA through secure legal channels. They were expecting interference. So they also sent the files to civil rights organizations, legal watchdogs, and whistleblower hotlines. Emma's courage triggered a chain reaction. Dr. Michelle Lynn, the physician, who had already risked her reputation by standing up for Marcus, received the call she had hoped for. We're moving your statement to federal jurisdiction. Within hours, she was re-interviewed by FAA investigators, this time with media presence waiting outside. Her new footage, combined with Emma's, was explosive. On social media, hashtags like Justice for Marcus and FlyEqual exploded. Passengers from past Dominion flights began speaking out. A black businesswoman shared her story of being downgraded despite booking first class with rewards points. A Latino veteran posted about being interrogated over his military ID. Then came a bombshell. Tyler's legal team uncovered a buried legal complaint from 5 years ago. A former Dominion pilot had attempted to sue the airline for a toxic work culture that penalized employees who spoke out against discrimination. The case had been settled quietly with an ironclad NDA. But now, seeing the rising storm, the former pilot Daniel Reese reached out. He shared internal emails from the early development of the passenger profiling for premium optimization policy. He confirmed that the phrase efficiency-focused passengers was Dominion's internal code for people of color who tend to be more demanding with less loyalty return. Simone's team now had enough for a discrimination case that went beyond Marcus. This was systemic, and the witnesses kept coming. A black flight attendant anonymously submitted her resignation with a note, "I won't work for a company that sees my mother as a burden, not a customer." A retired Dominion executive quietly forwarded a folder of emails showing Charles Wellington personally approving the profiling policy. The cover email simply read, "I'm sorry it took me this long." In the streets outside Dominion's Atlanta headquarters, protesters gathered. Signs read, "We all belong in first class and equality shouldn't need a CEO's son to matter." Media pressure mounted. Morning shows invited Marcus for interviews. Though he hesitated, Tyler encouraged him. "You've already shown more strength than most adults I know," he said. "Now show them your mind." Marcus agreed on one condition: the story had to be about the system, not just him. He sat down with a respected black journalist from a national outlet and gave the most poised, powerful interview of the year. "What happened to me wasn't unique," he said. "What's unique is that I had the resources to fight back. But how many people don't?" The interview went viral within hours. Corporations began distancing themselves from Dominion. The public tide turned, and behind it all, Marcus and Emma continued compiling, documenting, connecting the dots, not for revenge, but for reform. A movement was forming, but even as the witnesses rose and the tide shifted, Tyler warned his team, "Wellington won't go quietly. He built this empire for decades. He'll burn the truth to the ground before he lets it fall on his watch." What none of them knew yet was how far Wellington was willing to go, or what he had already set in motion behind the scenes. As Dominion's public image began to fracture under the weight of Emma Rodriguez's testimony and Dr. Michelle Lynn's video footage, the Jackson family knew that media momentum alone wouldn't be enough. Public sympathy was powerful but not invincible. It could shift, be twisted, and manipulated by Wellington's media machine. They needed something stronger than sentiment. They needed indisputable evidence so deeply woven and meticulously built that no counter-narrative could unravel it. Marcus, still healing from the trauma, both physical and emotional, took the lead. "I'm going to build something they can't touch," he told his parents late one night as they sat around the kitchen table lit only by the blue glow of laptop screens. "A framework, a digital chain of custody, something that verifies every file, every source, every witness account, and tracks every alteration made to them." Tyler nodded. "You're building a forensic vault." Marcus grinned faintly. "No, I'm building a weapon. Truth that fights back." The plan took shape quickly. Using a secure offline environment, Marcus began coding an architecture modeled on blockchain verification, each file linked by cryptographic hash timestamped, watermarked, and geotagged. But this vault wouldn't just store files. It would validate them in real time, track their movement, and flag any tampering attempts. He called it Protocol Umbrella. Amara Jackson, meanwhile, mobilized her network. As a physician, she had treated CEOs' wives, judges' children, and city council members through her years of medical service. Quietly and discreetly, she began gathering endorsements of support, asking for discreet testimonies about racial disparities they'd witnessed in corporate spaces. She framed it as a cultural reckoning, not a political attack. Many responded, some anonymously, others bravely on record. One was a federal transportation inspector. He sent Amara a dossier on previous unfiled complaints against Dominion, internal memos marked "Handle internally, no FAA escalation." A few were from airports where surveillance tapes had conveniently gone missing. Amara forwarded the material to Marcus for encoding into Protocol Umbrella. Tyler, meanwhile, leaned into his industry connections. He reached out to former FAA Director William Harmon, an old friend and former adversary. Harmon wasn't surprised by Tyler's story. "I warned people about Wellington 15 years ago," he said over a secure line. No one wanted to listen. "Will you now?" Tyler asked. Harmon agreed. Within a week, he provided archived FAA records that had been dismissed or buried complaints about uneven treatment on Dominion flights, first-class boarding denials, luggage tampering, and unexplained flight changes disproportionately affecting Black travelers. With each record, Marcus ran it through Protocol Umbrella's checksum process and added it to a growing wall of authenticated data. But that wasn't enough. They needed to crack Wellington's inner sanctum. That meant breaching Dominion's secure corporate network, a fortress built over decades and protected by top cybersecurity vendors. Marcus didn't plan to hack it. He planned to lure it open. He devised a phishing counterattack, not malicious code, but a carefully constructed request for system updates disguised as internal optimization patches. The target Dominion's employee intranet, specifically the legacy backend used for internal communications. Emma helped. She still had her login credentials and access to an internal newsletter template. With guidance from Marcus, she embedded a trigger file, a seemingly routine PDF update, on passenger satisfaction metrics. But once opened, the file pinged an external server and created a handshake with Protocol Umbrella. It didn't collect confidential data. It simply logged the pathway, mapped the architecture, and created a data flow profile. Once Marcus had the blueprint, he knew how to reach the deeper servers, the ones not on the official charts, the ones used by Wellington's inner circle. That's when they made the most stunning discovery yet. Buried in an encrypted subfolder titled Strategic Continuity was a document named Coalition Protocols.pdf. At first glance, it seemed innocuous technical jargon, policy references, obscure financial graphs. But as they decrypted and translated each page, the horror unfolded. This wasn't just about airline discrimination. It was about systemic social control. The coalition included not only transportation executives, but also figures in finance, insurance, healthcare, and logistics. A decades-long plan to prioritize premium service access based on predictive behavior models trained on racially biased data sets. They used code words, efficiency tier passengers for white customers, challenge tier for minorities. Training documents instructed flight attendants to downgrade service when customer behavioral fatigue thresholds were met, meaning when Black passengers complained or asked for fair treatment. Marcus added every page to Protocol Umbrella. Then he built a failsafe. In case anything happened to him, the vault would release itself to over 150 pre-selected contacts, journalists, civil rights leaders, whistleblower attorneys, and regulatory bodies in the US, Canada, and Europe. No single point of failure. No way to bury the truth again. As the final test completed, Marcus turned to his parents. "It's ready. The moment we go public, everything launches." Tyler placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You built this. You choose the moment." Marcus didn't respond immediately. He looked at the glowing screen, thousands of files flickering in cascading lines of light, each one a testimony, a receipt, a voice that had once been silenced. "Not yet," he finally said. "Wellington still thinks he's winning. Let him move first." Because what Marcus knew and what Wellington didn't was that sometimes the best way to win a war wasn't to strike first, but to let your enemy believe they've already won. The invitation came wrapped in arrogance. A sleek envelope embossed with the Dominion Airlines seal arrived at the Jackson residence by private courier addressed directly to Tyler Jackson. Inside, a formal letter inviting him to attend the annual Aviation Leadership Summit, an event Charles Wellington traditionally hosted atop the Skyline Tower in downtown Atlanta. This year, however, it would be held not under the banner of unity, but domination. Dominion Airlines was rumored to be preparing a major announcement. Many suspected it would be Wellington's move to finalize the acquisition of Skyline International. "This is bait," Amara said flatly, tossing the invitation onto the kitchen counter. "He's daring you to show your face." Tyler nodded, "And we're going to take it." Marcus had been expecting this. It's the only way to force his hand in public. If he gloats, he'll expose something. And we'll be ready. The plan was surgical. Tyler would attend the summit in person, walking straight into Wellington's den of power. He'd wear the same discreet recording tools Marcus had perfected: microphone, In his tie-clip backup audio embedded in his cufflinks, and most importantly, a transmitter built into a business card that would create a secure connection to Protocol Umbrella from within Dominion's internal network the moment it was handed off. If he touches that card, it's over, Marcus said. We'll get live access to anything connected to that handshake. But there was one risk they couldn't fully control. Wellington was paranoid. If he suspected even the slightest irregularity, he would either shut the whole summit down or worse, take Tyler out of the picture completely. So the Jacksons devised a two-tiered offensive. Tier 1 Tyler would confront Wellington publicly, engage him in conversation, let his arrogance bloom. Tier 2 Marcus would remotely breach the summit's intranet using the handshake vector. From there, he'd access Dominion's summit presentation files and internal briefing notes, whatever Wellington was preparing to unveil. The day of the summit dawned cold and gray, the city skyline blurred by mist. Tyler stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie in silence. Amara stepped behind him and smoothed his collar. "Come back to me," she whispered. "I will," he promised, with proof. Meanwhile, Marcus established his remote base inside the reinforced studio of a local civil rights organization, a partner in the Equal Skies initiative. From there, he had a clear encrypted connection into the summit's proximity-based wireless systems. As Tyler arrived, the ballroom buzzed with opulence. Executives, investors, politicians, everyone dressed to kill, and at the center, Charles Wellington in a custom-tailored suit, his posture radiating smugness. Well, Wellington drawled as Tyler approached. "I'm surprised you came. I assumed you'd be too busy coordinating your next smear campaign." Tyler smiled calmly. "Just here to watch history. I hear you're making an announcement." "Oh, I'll be making several," Wellington said, his voice low and tight, "starting with the complete absorption of Skyline and a restructuring plan that will retire your brand forever." He extended a hand. Tyler didn't shake it. Instead, he offered his business card. "For your records," he said evenly. Wellington took it, and the trap was set. At the same moment, Marcus' eyes fixed on his laptop screen watched the protocols light up. Access granted. Handshake established. Intranet breached. Lines of code flowed across Marcus's screen as Protocol Umbrella penetrated the summit's secured systems. Presentation files, strategy decks, internal memos, emails scheduled for press release. And then he saw it. A confidential briefing slide titled Strategic Realignment Post-Acquisition Restoring Order. It included a bullet point plan: retire all Skyline diversity programs, terminate whistleblowers currently under litigation, reinstate loyalty-based hiring protocols, Wellington's coded language for favoring insiders, rebalance customer service models to favor revenue-generating demographics. "This is it," Marcus whispered. "He's putting it all in writing." Back at the summit, Wellington was grandstanding from the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a time of chaos, of social justice hysteria. But here at Dominion, we believe in order, tradition, and elite service standards." He clicked the remote for his keynote. Behind him, the opening slide appeared. But it wasn't the one he expected. Instead, it read, "Discrimination is not order. It's a business model, and it's illegal." Gasps filled the room. Then the screen began to change, each slide pulled directly from Dominion's own files, policy notes, racial profiling, training documents, and internal chat logs mocking diversity initiatives. A final image appeared, the Protocol Umbrella symbol, with the words, "Equal Skies has breached the clouds." Wellington's eyes widened. "Shut it down," he shouted at the AV team, but it was too late. The broadcast had been mirrored across every summit screen and streamed live via Equal Skies social accounts. Tyler walked calmly up to the stage. "This is what Charles Wellington has built. Not just an airline empire, but a discriminatory machine designed to keep power in the hands of a few while pretending to serve the many." Security began to approach, but the press was already recording, and retreat wasn't an option. Tyler turned to Wellington. "Was it worth it?" he asked softly. The lies, the assaults, the manipulation. Wellington, red-faced and trembling, couldn't speak. Then the ballroom doors burst open. FBI agents. The lead agent raised her badge. "Charles Wellington, you're under arrest for conspiracy fraud, unlawful detention, and civil rights violations." Silence fell as the handcuffs clicked. Wellington turned once toward Tyler as he was led away, eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over." Tyler didn't blink. "Yes, it is. Because this time the truth had gone public, and there was no sky high enough to hide from it. The ripple effect was immediate. By the time Charles Wellington was escorted out of the summit ballroom in handcuffs, every major news outlet had pushed breaking news banners across their feeds. Within 20 minutes, the hashtag Equal Skies dominated global trends. Journalists who had once hesitated now flooded the airwaves, replaying the hacked summit slides frame by frame, dissecting every line of Dominion's discriminatory agenda. Tyler Jackson stood outside the Skyline Tower as a wave of reporters rushed toward him. He didn't run. He didn't hide. With calm clarity, he addressed the cameras. The world saw today what many of us have known for years, that discrimination doesn't need white hoods and burning crosses to exist. It hides in corporate strategy decks, in hiring memos, and in systems built to quietly exclude. Inside the Equal Skies war room, Marcus slumped into his chair, the adrenaline of success giving way to exhaustion. Around him, the civil rights tech team worked in silence, processing incoming whistleblower evidence, transferring files to the Department of Justice, and answering global inquiries. He checked the server logs, 17.2 million downloads of the Protocol Umbrella archive within 6 hours. 128 countries reached, 49 major media outlets using the data live on air. It was no longer just about Dominion. The documents had revealed a network, a decades-old multi-industry alliance informally called the Coalition, where leaders across transportation, finance, real estate, and healthcare had collaborated to suppress diversity efforts under the guise of protecting legacy operations. Protocol Umbrella had cracked open the gates to something far larger than the Jackson family had originally imagined. By sundown, chaos reigned across the corporate world. Executives from Fortune 500 companies began issuing statements distancing themselves from Wellington and promising internal audits. The stock prices of implicated firms fell like dominoes, 20%, 30%, some hitting halt thresholds. Shareholders demanded emergency board meetings. The FAA announced a special commission to investigate systemic bias in airline operations. The SEC launched inquiries into insider trading connected to Wellington's rise and rapid Dominion acquisitions. And the DOJ confirmed that a RICO case typically used against criminal enterprises was being explored to prosecute the coalition as an organized discriminatory syndicate. Meanwhile, Wellington sat alone in a federal holding facility, stripped of his tailored suits and corporate power. His lawyer, once confident and smug, now begged for a plea deal. The fall was absolute, but the battle wasn't over. Tyler and Marcus knew that toppling a figurehead wouldn't eliminate the system that enabled him. The real danger lay in the vacuum where lesser-known operatives might step in to rebuild the same machinery under new names. That's why they pivoted from exposure to reconstruction. The first move, a nationwide campaign to redefine corporate accountability titled Bias is Policy. Equal Skies partnered with whistleblowers from banking and healthcare to demonstrate how racial and economic disparities were often built into algorithms, product placement, customer service training, and even facility design. Marcus, now heralded as the tech mastermind behind the exposure, was invited to brief Congress. In a nationally televised session, he explained how he developed the adaptive logic model for Protocol Umbrella. "My algorithm wasn't designed to hack systems," he said. "It was designed to mirror them, to reflect back exactly what was happening in real time without bias. If your system discriminates, the mirror doesn't lie." Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle sat stunned. Some whispered that Marcus Jackson might be the Edward Snowden of the corporate civil rights era, but instead of leaking national secrets, he had exposed institutional racism in plain sight. At Skyline International, things were moving fast. The board, once fractured, now rallied around Tyler. The same members who had questioned his leadership now saw him as the company's savior. Investor confidence returned, bolstered by Skyline's clean record in the Protocol Umbrella dump. Marcus had scrubbed it meticulously to ensure Skyline's internal practices were above reproach. That transparency paid off. Skyline stocks surged. New investors, including several impact-driven funds, offered backing. And the company's transformation into the first equity-certified airline began, complete with third-party audits, blind hiring panels, and bias-neutral customer protocols powered by Marcus' algorithm. Yet amid the rebuilding, a somber tone lingered. Emma Rodriguez was still in a medically induced coma. Though doctors were optimistic, she had suffered neurological damage. The Jacksons visited her daily, holding her hand and updating her on the world she helped change. "We're going to name the new anti-bias training program after her," Tyler told Marcus. The Rodriguez Standard. Michelle Lynn recovered fully and returned to work only now she was named the head of a newly formed federal oversight committee, her task to ensure all airlines complied with unbiased treatment policies. The tide was turning. In a private White House meeting, the president offered Tyler a cabinet position, Secretary of Transportation. He declined, instead nominating a younger leader. Marcus Jackson understands the intersection of tech justice and innovation better than anyone I know, Tanner said. If you want lasting reform, start by trusting the next generation. The offer wasn't official, but the idea spread. Articles appeared, should Marcus Jackson lead a new civil rights tech-era opinion polls supported it. Back home, Marcus was ambivalent. I didn't do this to be famous, he said. I did it because someone slapped me in the face and thought the world wouldn't care. Amara smiled. And now the world does. But one question remained nagging in the minds of everyone watching. What other coalitions like Wellington's are still out there hidden in the shadows untouched? Unexposed, Marcus knew. We found one system, he said, but there are hundreds more, and we're just getting started. The fire had scorched everything. Now came the rebuilding. The Jackson family, once under siege, now found themselves in the center of a global movement. After Protocol Umbrella exposed the coalition of discriminatory executives across multiple industries, a new wave of reckoning swept the country. But Marcus knew the risk. Without systemic reconstruction, the next Wellington would simply rise under a different name. That's why Equal Skies shifted from exposure to innovation. On the second Monday after Wellington's arrest, Equal Skies unveiled the Justice Integration Framework, JIF, a technology-driven protocol that could be embedded into customer service systems, HR workflows, and hiring platforms to detect bias in real time. Unlike traditional DEI training, JIF didn't rely on changing hearts. It focused on changing behavior through accountability. The pilot program was launched with 12 companies across transportation, banking, and healthcare. And at its core was Marcus's algorithm, re-engineered not to mirror injustice, but to counteract it, providing corrective pathways, flagging discriminatory behaviors, and offering anonymous reporting with verified chain of custody. The message was clear: technology helped hide discrimination. Now it would help dismantle it. Meanwhile, Skyline International's transformation became a blueprint for others. Under Tyler's leadership, the airline offered transparent internal audits to the public, committed 15% of executive hiring to underrepresented backgrounds, and introduced a customer equity guarantee where any report of discriminatory treatment was reviewed within 24 hours by an independent panel. At first, other airlines resisted. But when Skyline's customer satisfaction scores soared and their bookings surged from both domestic and international travelers seeking a bias-free experience, resistance turned to curiosity. And curiosity soon became cooperation. By the third month, a historic agreement was signed at a Federal Aviation Roundtable, the Equitable Skies Accord. 15 major U.S. airlines committed to implement the Jackson Framework for Equity, auditing the Rodriguez Standard for cabin crew training, and regular DOJ oversight for racial treatment claims. It was the largest voluntary civil rights agreement in transportation history. News outlets called it the Airline Civil Rights Act of the 21st century, but Marcus wasn't done. He had long suspected that what happened to him was just a visible crack in a much deeper structure. With support from Dr. Town, Michelle Lynn, and a growing coalition of whistleblowers, he launched Project Glass Run, a cross-industry investigation aimed at unmasking bias in education algorithms, real estate pricing, insurance coverage, and digital hiring software. Within weeks, more evidence surfaced. An Ivy League admissions algorithm giving legacy students a 300% scoring bump. A real estate tool devaluing homes in Black neighborhoods by mislabeling community safety metrics. A job-matching AI that downgraded resumes from candidates with ethnic-sounding names regardless of qualifications. The pattern was clear. America's systems weren't broken. They were designed this way. Justice doesn't just mean new laws, Marcus said during a TED Talk viewed by over 12 million people in its first 48 hours. It means rewiring the code that runs our society. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, but not everyone applauded. Behind the scenes, remnants of Wellington's old network were regrouping. Though their central leader was gone, many of his associates had avoided prosecution by acting as passive collaborators. These shadow figures began pushing back through lobbying, misinformation campaigns, and quiet efforts to defund agencies tasked with overseeing racial bias. A smear campaign against equal skies emerged on fringe networks. Fabricated stories of false discrimination claims and weaponized wokeness gained traction in certain circles. Protests erupted outside Skyline's headquarters, fueled by influencers calling the reforms reverse racism. Tyler expected it. They're cornered, he told his team, and cornered power strikes hardest. But we've survived worse. The turning point came at an international civil rights summit in Geneva, where Marcus presented his most audacious proposal. Yet Global Bias Index (GBI), a public-facing database where companies, universities, and institutions would be scored based on algorithmic fairness, workforce representation, customer treatment, and transparency. The index would be updated quarterly and open to public scrutiny. Predictably, industry leaders balked. "You'll destroy reputations," said a tech CEO during the closed session. "No," Marcus replied. "You already did that. We're just showing the receipts." Support flooded in from unexpected corners: Scandinavian regulators, South African equity funds, and indigenous rights organizations in Canada. Even the United Nations adopted a resolution supporting data-driven equity monitoring in global commerce. And amidst the global changes, something deeply personal occurred. Emma Rodriguez awoke from her coma. Her voice was faint, her movements slow, but her eyes were sharp as ever when Marcus sat by her bedside. "You told the truth," she whispered. And now, Marcus said, smiling, "the world believes it." Emma's recovery became a symbol, her testimony broadcast during a Senate hearing on federal workplace discrimination protections. She spoke haltingly but with purpose, reminding the nation that standing up often comes at a cost. But silence, she said, costs more. Months later, Tyler received an unexpected visit from Gerald Thompson, the businessman who had originally supported Veronica Palmer's lies on the plane. He came not with excuses but an offer. "I want to invest in equal skies," he said, "and publicly own my role in all this. I was complicit through cowardice." Tyler studied him for a long moment. "Redemption," he finally said, "isn't granted. It's earned." Gerald nodded. "Then I'll start earning it." By year's end, Equal Skies had grown from a whistleblower network into a global think tank, educational resource, and policy accelerator. Its offices opened in London, Nairobi, and Sao Paulo. Governments invited its experts to help audit civic systems. Universities adopted its tools to re-examine grading and admissions bias. Marcus, once slapped in a cabin and told to stay quiet, was now at the helm of a movement that had reshaped the world. Yet he remained grounded. "Power isn't something you inherit," he told a group of students during a surprise visit to his old high school. "It's something you wield for others. Or it isn't worth having at all." As he walked out of the building, he saw his old locker still dented from the fake money stuffed into it months earlier. He placed a note inside. "To the next kid who thinks they don't belong, you do. You always have." The world was changing, not because Wellington fell, but because Marcus and millions like him had finally stood up. The story that began with a slap had grown into a worldwide movement. But in the final analysis, this was never about just one boy, one airline, or even one corrupt executive. This was a mirror held up to society, forcing us all to reckon with how easily dignity can be denied and how fiercely it must be reclaimed. A year to the day after Marcus Jackson boarded Dominion Flight 2187, the world watched as he returned to the skies. This time not as a silent observer, not as a test subject for corporate espionage, but as the newly appointed chairman of the Dominion Airlines board. At just 17, Marcus had done what seasoned leaders could not: expose a hidden empire of bias, survive a coordinated smear campaign, and help reconstruct the very system that tried to destroy him. But he wasn't interested in legacy. He was interested in impact. At his first official board meeting, Marcus laid out a vision not just for Dominion, but for every industry struggling to shed its discriminatory past: total transparency, data-driven fairness, and most of all, public accountability. "We're not just fixing an airline," he told the room. "We're building a new altitude of justice." Under his guidance, Dominion implemented the Equal Treatment Index, a real-time dashboard that passengers could view during any flight, displaying fairness metrics like crew response time, by-seat demographic parity, in-service delivery, and resolution logs for all in-flight issues. Nothing like it had ever existed. The backlash was immediate. Industry pundits called it overreach. Some unions threatened walkouts. A few investors fled, but the public surged in support. By the end of the quarter, Dominion's customer satisfaction ratings topped the global rankings, and a new generation of travelers began choosing airlines based not on price or perks, but on principles. Elsewhere, the ripple effects were undeniable. Congress passed the Passenger Equity and Accountability Act, PEAA, a sweeping law that mandated anti-bias training, whistleblower protections, and third-party monitoring for all U.S.-based transportation providers. Similar legislation followed in the EU and South Korea. More importantly, young people like Marcus, tech-savvy, ethically grounded, and strategically bold, began taking leadership roles in companies, nonprofits, and civic organizations. The age of top-down reform was ending. A new era of bottom-up reconstruction had begun. Yet not all legacies were born in boardrooms. Dr. Michelle Lin, having recovered from her suspicious car accident, declined political appointments and media deals. Instead, she returned to practicing medicine, this time at a free clinic in South Atlanta serving underinsured families. Her quiet defiance during Marcus' assault had made her a hero. But she insisted her job wasn't to be remembered. It was to make others feel seen. I spoke up because it was right, she told a group of young volunteers. Now make that your baseline, not your exception. Emma Rodriguez, the flight attendant who risked everything, took her place at the helm of Dominion's cabin crew division. She rebuilt training programs from the ground up, transforming them from passive checklists into immersive trauma-informed curriculums. But her most powerful reform, a new hiring directive that prioritized second chances. Some of the people who helped cover for Wellington were victims of the same system, she explained. The cycle ends when opportunity begins. Even Veronica Palmer, once the face of injustice, chose not to disappear. After serving her sentence and completing an intensive restorative justice program, she became a speaker for workplace bias reform. Facing her own racism had shattered her, but rebuilding, she said, had set her free. I thought power was about controlling others, she told a crowded panel. But Marcus Jackson showed me it's about protecting others. That's leadership. For Marcus, the journey remained deeply personal. His mother, Amara, resumed her medical career, now heading a multi-state healthcare equity task force. His father, Tyler, stepped back from daily operations at Skyline to become a federal advisor on anti-discrimination policy and commerce. The man once kidnapped and silenced now shaped national strategy. But Marcus didn't chase headlines. He spent most of his time mentoring high school students interested in justice tech, a field he helped pioneer. He partnered with civil rights labs to build open-source tools for detecting algorithmic bias. He launched an incubator for underrepresented teens to create ethical AI models. He didn't just want change, he wanted succession. Justice isn't a moment, he told a graduating class at MIT. It's a discipline, a structure, a habit. Practice it. Still, one final moment brought the arc full circle. Marcus boarded Dominion Flight 2187 again. This time incognito. No press, no entourage, just a hoodie and a laptop. Mid-flight, a young black boy spilled his juice and looked around nervously, expecting a reprimand. But a flight attendant, Zoe Davis, smiled and knelt down to help. "It's okay, sweetie," she said gently. "We've got you." The boy smiled, and so did Marcus. He closed his laptop, stared out at the clouds, and breathed. Because this quiet dignity was the real victory. Not revenge, not even justice, but a new normal. A world where no one had to prove they deserved humanity. Where power wasn't used to intimidate, but to protect. Where one voice silenced by a slap could echo across a system and bring it to its knees. The skies had changed, and they would never fly the same again. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to catch more gripping stories like this. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.